pass over now to Ruth George from the Work and Pension Select Committee, who's I'm sure got lots of insights from the very hard work the Select Committee does.
Thank you, Emma. And yes, I've joined Parliament in 2017 alongside Emma and alongside Marsha as well. We were the unexpected intake, and I hope that feels that has actually, there are more of us who are women. There are more of us who are not necessarily young political careerists. I don't want to talk anybody's career down, but that was not why we went into politics. We all were campaigners first, and people who stood as candidates in 2017 because our local communities asked us to, because they saw what we were doing anyway. So we're people first. Thank you. And as a local campaigner mum, I do have a lot of friends who are disabilities who've been subject to the PIP ESA process all the way through for the last over a decade since it's been introduced. And I know very well that it came in under a Labour government, and that there's lots in the very design of the system that needs to be rethought. That, exactly as Jim said, it hasn't been brought in order to support people, in order to make them better off. It is part of a system of benefits that is designed to give away as little as possible of taxpayers' money and only to those who this government describe as the most in need or the most deserving, which is just the connotations of that for the way that choices are made is absolutely horrific, because right from the top down it is saying that people who are in need but that need is not great enough will not qualify. And unfortunately that means that people who may be in need at the moment but don't qualify for any sort of support now are likely to see themselves in greater need in months or years to come. Yeah. And we're building up problems for the future. We did a report, one of the first reports we did on the Select Committee, I think when Marsha was still a member, back in the, that we started it off, into PIP and ESA assessments, because that was very obviously the priority. They weren't working. We took some really hard-hitting evidence as part of that inquiry and produced a report back in February 2018. And that was very much a cross-party report. At the time, the Select Committee had a full quota of Conservative MPs on it. We don't anymore. We have 2 Conservative MPs on the Work and Pensions Committee out of 5 places. They simply will not come on. They don't want to know what is happening with their own benefit system. They don't even want to look at making recommendations as part of that democratic Select Committee process. If the Conservative Party as a whole wanted to, then they could very easily get their whips to ask MPs to take a role, but they're not. They've, as a whole, as a party, they have stood back from Work and Pensions Select Committee and from scrutiny of the work of their own department. So but that also gives them an excuse to say that the reports that we produce are biased reports because there is a majority of opposition MPs on the committee now, and that makes it more difficult for us to get our recommendations implemented. It is just one of the ways in which the current government has stood back from normal processes of government and of scrutiny and action which should be undertaken as a whole. And I'm afraid that people with disability have suffered because of that. Because that report from February 2018, we had to push very hard to get the government's response to include any recommendations in there. The key thing that they agreed to do was videoing of all assessments, which we thought, well, okay, that's the start to improving quality. And actually by doing that videoing, we will be able to show what's happening on the front line, and people with disability will be able to show where the assessment process has gone wrong for them. It will help in mandatory recons and hopefully in appeals as well. But of course it's simply not happening. And having challenged in Parliament and in the Select Committee, we keep being told, oh, there's pilots going on, but not where those pilots are going on. And of course, on the ground, what we're seeing is they are relying on people knowing their rights and knowing that they can request for recording of their assessments. But they make it particularly difficult to do that. If you need a home assessment, then you have to provide your own equipment. Sometimes even in the assessment centres, then you have to provide your own equipment. They'll say, oh, it's not working. They really make life as difficult as possible to get those assessments recorded. Where they do, and of course my advice always to any constituent who gets in touch with me before the assessment process is make sure you insist on getting a recording. Sometimes people at the on the phone lines don't even know that that's their right. They try and tell people that it's not, but it's a case of it is actually in the letter that you get. It's just tucked away on the 3rd page, I think it is. So it's a case of highlighting that to people. Where that happens, my understanding and my feedback is that generally those assessments are going better. But I know that that's simply from the point of view of people who have contacted the DWP, said, I've been in touch with my MP, who's a member of the Select Committee, who is telling me that I can get this assessment recorded. Great, but I'm well aware that that is very much the tip of the iceberg, and there are very different decisions going on out there. It was really highlighted to me at my surgery last week when a lady who's a mum of a teenage boy came to see me. She was diagnosed with a brain tumour 2 years ago, told that she had 6 months to 2 years to live, so she didn't qualify for DS 1500. She's managed to outlive her diagnosis by at least another 12 months. She knows that it's terminal. She knows she hasn't got long. She's trying to get her son through his education. But she's been given no points for PIP now. She had a Motability card that they're now taking off her, and she's stranded on an isolated estate on the edge of a town, and she can't actually go anywhere or enjoy any sort of quality of life for her last few months that she's got with her son. So where that is going on, that is a system that is not working. As a Select Committee, as an MP, I will keep trying to hold this government to account for what they are actually doing to people. As a party, we are using that experience and trying to build from the lived experience of people with disability, of the whole system, to build it from the bottom up. And I'm really pleased that Marsha's here as our Shadow Minister for Disability to be able to set that out. But I wanted you to understand, because you are not seeing the changes that are needed, a little bit of how this government is avoiding their basic responsibilities to the courts, to democracy and to human rights, to avoid their responsibilities to people with disability, and how, try as we might in Parliament, it is really hard to hold the government to account that break all the rules. Hopefully, as of this morning, that will be changing a bit.